Respected past presidents, Mr. Avik Sarkar, dignitaries present, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to a very popular event in Calcutta's social calendar, the National Debate. This debate has been held for 3 decades now. After the initial 2 years, we have been privileged to have, for most years, as our partner, the Telegraph. Over the years, the Calcutta Club National Debate has indeed been a nationally acclaimed event. We have heard at this venue personalities of national eminence, parliamentarians, academicians, legal luminaries, and others. No democracy can thrive without a debate. I believe it is better to debate and not resolve an issue rather than to settle an issue without a debate. Debates help us to analyze problems in greater detail. It also helps us to accept and appreciate differences of opinions in a civil society. Tolerance for other views merely demonstrates empathy and stronger emotional intelligence amongst people that is so very crucial for a developing economy. The debate today addresses the very critical issue on the way we govern ourselves. Democracy is, of course, of the people, by the people, but is it just for a few people? It is this proposition that begs the question, is adult franchise then the answer to the problems that the majority face in the country today? Ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted to present before you this evening a galaxy of speakers who will precisely debate this issue, the basis of governance and the purpose as well. Whatever be the result in today's debate, let me assure you the winner is Indian democracy and the quintessential argumentative Indian. I have no doubt that we Indians do always hold our heads high and our minds are without fear. Thank you.
Thank you, President. We will now get along with the debate for which all of you have come here tonight. Today's motion, the government should be run directly by the people. This is precisely what's happening all across the world. In different countries, you must have noticed from the media that there are people uprising, common people who are now trying to take over the government, and that's how, this particular flavor is also very, very true in our country, and that's why, recently had what we have seen in the Delhi elections. We're going to debate all of that right now. For tonight's debate, we'll have the moderator, Ms. Nidhi Razdan. Can I request Ms. Nidhi Razdan to please come on the dais and take over the proceeding? Nidhi Razdan, of course, all of you must be aware of, is a senior editor with NDTV and a familiar face on the TV. Let us welcome Ms. Nidhi Razdan. Now we'll have all the panelists on the dais, please. Mr. Derek O'Brien. Can we have Mr. Derek O'Brien on the dais? Yes, please come, Derek. General J.J. Singh. General J.J. Singh. Welcome, Mr. Singh. Ms. Meera Sannal. Ms. Meera Sannal? Yeah, please. Mr. Mithun Chakraborty. Mithun? Oh, there. Ms. Ruchir Joshi. Mr. Ruchir Joshi. Over here. Mr. Sanjay Jha. Mr. Sanjay Jha. Welcome, Mr. Jha. Ms. Sajia Limi. Sajia Imi. Yeah, sorry. This is yours. And Ms. Shriti Irani. Okay. Now we have the full panel here. I'll now hand over the mic to Ms. Nidhi Razdan to take over the proceedings from here. And we just have one more thing to do. Rituparna Chattopadhyay, please come and take. She will be the timekeeper. You can tell her what the rules are so she would know.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here this evening. I would like to say that I'm personally very happy to be here in Kolkata this evening, a city which I'm personally very fond of. It's also nice to be away from the political cauldron in Delhi with its pepper sprays and knives and prime-time resignations. So it's actually nice to be here away from it all. The motion this evening is a very topical one. It couldn't have come at a better time as far as I'm concerned. The government should be run directly by the people. It's a subject that we are debating constantly and endlessly in the national capital with the rise of the Aam Aadmi Party and Arvind Kejriwal's government. But I think it's something that the entire country is now debating today and watching what is happening in Delhi very closely to see whether the AAP is able to replicate that kind of politics outside of the national capital and become bigger than it has as far as Delhi is concerned. Well, we've got 8 wonderful speakers tonight for and against the motion. Everybody has 6 minutes. The first warning bell will be at 6 minutes. If you'd like to speak a little longer, the final bell is at 8 minutes. And just to remind all of you that we will stick to time no matter what. This is what I do every day for a living, so I will interrupt you if you cross that 8 minutes. So I'm just warning you in advance. So I'd like to invite Meera Sanyal first for the motion being once again that the government should be run directly by the people.
Thank you, Nidhi. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In the debate, the government should be run directly by the people, and the motion of the people versus the people's representative, I speak for the motion, I speak for the people. As we were being introduced, democracy was being described as a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So let us address this by starting with whether we have a government which is being run for the people. I think there must not be a single one of us in this audience who has not watched with horror the scenes that Nidhi was talking about in our parliament and in the Delhi Assembly, with pepper sprays and mics being torn up. But let's talk a little bit more about the functioning of Parliament, particularly the 15th Lok Sabha. I'd like to share with you, ladies and gentlemen, that this 5-year term has seen Parliament function for a total of only 345 days. That is 1 year out of 5 years. And we can compare this with previous Lok Sabhas, particularly the earlier ones, where Parliament functioned for 4 to 5 times this amount. Talking of the bills which have been passed, in this 15th term, only 165 bills have been passed, the lowest ever since independence. There are now over 130 bills pending, the oldest of which dates back 27 years to 1987. Key legislation, such as economic bills that will help drive our economy forward, GST, DTC, microfinance, and key social legislation, such as the Grievance Redressal Bill, the Whistleblower Protection Act, have not yet been passed. And these 2 bills, which are critical to prevent social activists from being targeted by vested interests, will lapse in the next 10 days unless they are passed. You can turn around and say that this is a busy political establishment. That's the way Indian Parliament runs. But let me share with you a bill which was passed with great alacrity and speed. The name of that bill is the Salary, Allowances and Pension of Members of Parliament. It was tabled, ladies and gentlemen, in the year 2010. It proposed a 300% hike in the salaries of MPs, and it proposed a 100% hike in their constituency allowance. It was tabled on the 25th of August 2010. It was passed by the Lok Sabha in a record time of 2 days on the 27th of August 2010. And it was ratified by the higher house, by the Rajya Sabha, in another 2 days on the 29th of August 2010. So it's clear that when our representatives want to work, they can work quite speedily. Sometimes they work very well outside of Parliament as well. As per the statistics of ADR, the assets, the self-declared assets of our members of Parliament, 304 of whom stood for re-election, went up by 300% between 2004 and 2009. As a banker, many people ask me what we should do to get our economy going. I think all we have to do is to ask our MPs how they do this. We could all take a leaf out of their book. But what it shows, ladies and gentlemen, is that whoever they may be working for, our representatives are not working for us. Let's talk about the government of the people. Do our MPs represent us? So here we can take just what does the Indian population look like? As we can see from the audience and we can see from the dais, women are 49% of India's population. Yet in Parliament, we have only 58 female MPs. That is less than 11%. We have a young demographic in this country. And people are quite proud that actually we have 30% of our parliamentarians who are young, below 40 years of age. But the interesting thing is that 156 of these people are children of politicians. That is 29%. So they certainly represent their parents. They may or may not represent the rest of India. It gets worse. As the MPs get younger, the percentage rises. Every single MP in the 15th Lok Sabha below the age of 30 is sitting on an inherited seat. Parliamentarians between the age of 31 and 41, over 65% of them come from political families. And then we come to the issue of criminals. So here's the fact. 30% of our MPs and MLAs have a criminal case registered against them. If that were to be representative of the Indian people, ladies and gentlemen, 360 million of us would have criminal cases represented against us. So what's clear is that these people don't represent us. Which brings me to the topic, which is what do we mean by a government directly by the people? And I'm sure my co-panelists will go further on it. What I can say is that what we mean is a government which empowers people to govern themselves. Swarajya. Let our people have the right to take care of the things that affect their lives the most. Water, sanitation, health, education, safety. These are things that they can do and they can govern well. In conclusion, let me say that this debate will not be decided here, but it will be decided in the 2014 polls. The people will have a choice between naam ko vote do, government by a dynastic ruling elite, but that will not be a government of the people. You will also have a choice of namo ko vote do, vote for a supreme leader. You vote for him and he will fix the problems of this country. But that, ladies and gentlemen, will not be a government by the people. And you also have the choice of aap khud par rajya kare. आप खुद जनसभा बनाएं, मोहल्ला सभा बनाएं, ग्राम सभा बनाएं. Listen to the call of Swami Vivekananda. Make a government where the Indian people arise, awake, and take charge of their own destiny. Let me close by saying this. Our political representatives must understand that if you are a public servant, it doesn't mean that the minute you get elected, the public becomes your servant. It means that you enter a life of public service. I understand that the Chief Minister of Bengal today said that every politician, every representative should give 365 days of service. Bengal has led thought leadership in politics for many years.
Your time is up, Meera.
Let this message resound through India today. Vande Mataram.
Meera Sanyal there, of course, well known to all of you as a banking professional and now a politician, a member of the Aam Aadmi Party, possibly a future candidate for the Lok Sabha elections. And what you said there, particularly about the way Parliament has behaved this week, I think drew the maximum applause tonight, because that certainly made a lot of people think about what our MPs are doing in the House. But speaking against the motion tonight, the Chief Whip of the Trinamool Congress Rajya Sabha MP, Derek O'Brien, he's going to kick it off against the motion.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to oppose this motion. And as soon as we took a look at the motion, the first thing I did, which seems to be the flavor of the season, is to send an SMS. So I SMSed this motion to the PM. I didn't get a reply for 3 days. And then later I got a reply saying, sorry, my phone was on silent mode, just like me. Then I sent an SMS to a certain young gentleman in Delhi who got interviewed by the person who the nation wants to know. And he was extremely prompt in his response, absolutely in 30 seconds. I get another SMS from him. The SMS says, sure, I'm waiting for my party to take a decision. As soon as they take it, I will reverse it and SMS you. Then I sent the same SMS to the CM of a large state in Western India. Sent it about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I get a response from him saying, I only answer SMSs at chai time. Then I sent a fourth SMS, and this time it was to the CM. Sorry, former CM. Sanjay, you're looking totally stressed out today, sandwich there, but it's okay. I understand your pain. The former CM of Delhi, and his response was immediate. I have forwarded your SMS to all mobile phone subscribers in Delhi. They will revert in 3 days, and I will revert to you. That didn't get me anywhere. I sent a fifth SMS, and the last one, to the Chief Minister of a state in Eastern India, a lady. I get a prompt response saying, I didn't ask you when I shifted Writers' Building to Navanno, and I'm not going to tell you anything on your topic. Friends, that is good governance. You try and move Writers' Building with all its cobwebs of inefficiency, with all its baggage of the past, move it across the river. Don't ask anybody in the unions. You may or may not consult anybody in the party. Worse still, don't tie up with Avik Sarkar's The Telegraph or T2 or ABP to run an SMS campaign to find out what the mood of the city is. You have to be decisive. You have to represent the people, because it's your own call that you've taken. They've given you a mandate for 5 years, run it. Of course, there are people like Meera Sanyal, who I'm surprised she's upset with the MP's salaries. The cost to company of an MP is less than 20 or 22 lakhs a year. What are we talking about? Many of the bankers in the middle level of your banking system get 50, 60 lakhs a year. 20, 22 lakhs a year for an MP. You'd rather pay the MP 40, 44 lakhs and get good work done rather than be penny wise and pound foolish. But I can... Listen, Baba. You listen. Are Baba, I thought, I haven't got a chance to speak in Parliament for the last 3 months. I thought today at least you'll allow me to speak without disruption. Okay. You can, listen. At the end of it all, when the hands go up to vote, you can vote if you want that side if you don't agree with my point of view. That's okay. Okay. But I think the key is not how much our MPs get paid. The key to the subject is, do we need direct, the key word in that subject is directly by the people. And my submission is that you elect someone directly, you leave the person alone to run it his or her way. Then if you don't want to do it, knock the person out in 5 years. Direct democracy worked very good. Kotha to shunun. Vote deben na kotha shunun na. Direct democracy worked very, very well in Switzerland. Direct democracy worked, and I'll tell you how it works. I'm not saying direct democracy worked very well in Switzerland, but let me tell you the process of how it works. You can get a Swiss law change. I hate to say this, but I'm one of the few people here who lives in Calcutta. At least give me 8 minutes of my time without interrupting me. Nah? Thank you. In Switzerland, a citizen can bring about a change in a law asking for 50,000 signatures. You get 50,000 signatures, you can actually change or overturn a law in parliament. That's a form of direct democracy, which doesn't work. Now, imagine if you take the population of Switzerland, which is 8,000, put that on the population of India, it becomes 75 lakh people to change a law. 75 lakh people. I want to make 2 quick points at the end. One is on climate change. On climate change, there are, if you take the example of the earthquake in Japan, so many NGOs objected to nuclear power after the earthquake in Japan. Later, there are other people who are opposed to hydro projects. So I think, in fact, the NGOs which I was talking about, the UN, they've got NGOs called BINGOs, business and industry NGOs, environmental NGOs. Now, what we're trying to say is an NGO cannot have a competing veto. That's as absurd as asking 300 NGOs and 200 countries to come up with a solution for carbon emission. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, let me say this. We need, even in your club, you elect your committee. You elect them for a year. Let them work for a year. But don't expect your committee to send you a text saying, I'm having the food festival. Now should we serve A, Tangra food, or B, Park Street food? If you don't like the food he serves, vote him out. Vote him out, but trust your representatives. This is the point I'm trying to make. If you do not want to trust your representatives, then all of you will want the right to recall. And the right to recall is not the solution. The nota is not the solution. We have to take decisions, you have to trust people, and in the same way, where one decision to move, I've given you one decision, I can give you so many other solutions, whether you talk about peace in Darjeeling, or whether you talk about peace in Jungle Mahal, but just one simple idea of how Writers Building was moved to Nabanno for a bigger and a real reason. Please open your minds. I know you've come to the Calcutta Club, and we're all going to have a nice time here. My only... Sorry?
Derek, last 10 seconds
I only want to say this.
to say goodbye.
I will only say goodbye and leaving you with the thought. Search all your parks and your cities. Search all your parks and your cities. You'll find no statues of committees. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you very much, Derek. And I must say that this is a very passionate and participative audience, and it's great to see that energy. So please feel free to express your emotions without disrupting the speakers. It's lovely to see that. Sanjay Jha, national spokesperson of the Congress Party, is up next, speaking for the motion. You, of course, see him on television debates many times. Sanjay.
Good evening, Kolkata. Kolkata, can I hear you? Good evening, Kolkata. That's much better. Much better. Good evening, Kolkata. All right, okay, we challenge you today. Let me start by first, telling myself that I'm very fortunate to be with some wonderful people here on the panel, including two women. If you have seen me ever on a TV debate with Shazia Ilmi and the distinguished Meera Sanyal, I can promise you if we are in the same house, even if you have a brute majority of 500 seats in a 543-member parliament, the government won't last more than 49 days. But today is a different experience. In a few weeks from now, 16% of the world's population will vote in probably one of the most decisive elections in the world's largest democracy. You, ladies and gentlemen, will have the power to make certain decisions. 780 million people have been told, over 800,000 polling booths, 1.18 million electronic voting machines, not to mention cities and towns and over 640,000 villages. Now that's the power of Indian democracy. And that's the reason why today's topic is so germane to us. To everybody sitting here in the club, to those who will possibly watch this program on television. This is about us. This is about us, the people. Nidhi Razdan's television program is We the People, one of them, a very popular one. But this is about you, the people. And I'll tell you why. Because, end of day, somebody whom you love very much, Professor Amartya Sen, I remember, wrote that you empower people. Empowerment leads to entitlement. And entitlement leads to enrichment. But when we have a discussion on, representative democracy vis-a-vis direct democracy, let's not miss the woods for the trees, and I'll tell you why. Primarily, it's a very interesting example that we tend to ignore. If you look at India, an MP from India, and you compare him with somebody from the House of Commons, we have 543 MPs in India, representing 120 crore people. You have 650 people from the House of Commons in UK, representing, how many people? 5 crore people. Now tell me one thing, if you look at that statistic, it tells you why we are having this debate today. Because politicians in India, by the very nature of our parliamentary system, somewhere are not able to represent the people because you just can't. So the big, compelling question that we need to think of today is that an parliamentarian by himself or herself is inhibited by the very nature and the gigantic task in front of him or her. Now, which side of the debate I'm on? Let me answer that for you. Why do we need more power to be given to the people, as Meera Sanyal said earlier? And I'll tell you the reason why. There are many. You can talk of corruption, development, etc., etc. But the real reason is inequality. Inequality not just of incomes, but inequality of life. In the Mumbai city I live in, there are skyscrapers, but 55% of the people live in slums. 18% of India, ladies and gentlemen, lives in slums. Because while somebody is buying a fancy treadmill to lose weight and fight obesity, 21% of India is living below the poverty line fighting hunger. That's the reason why power needs to be given to the people of India. Now the question that you'll ask is, how do we do it? Do we do it Well, my name is Jha, but I can tell you I don't subscribe to Jharu politics. And I'll tell you the reason why. Because the referendum may not be the answer by itself. Referendums, as somebody said before, have been tried. But can a referendum give you a solution to Section 377, where you have to fight for minority rights? Can the LGBT community in India, through a referendum, get a vote which protects its dignity and freedom and values? Can that young boy who died in the streets of Delhi because he comes from northeastern part of India get a referendum in his favor against a lynch mob racism because you leave it to a majority vote? Can the book ban of Wendy Doniger be reverted because of a referendum vote? The answer is no. You cannot do it. But the answer lies, ladies and gentlemen, in the fact that we as a political system need to respect you not just that one time in 5 years when we come to you canvassing for votes, whichever party it may be, including mine, but we need to talk to you during the period of 5 years. You need to have a say in matters of governance during the time when you vote now and the time that will happen in 2019. As in the right to information, as in the way the country got together when a very innocent girl got brutally raped in winter, as at a time when you realize that there is any inequality and a society gets together to collectively fight it. That, ladies and gentlemen, is our challenge. And I can tell you that, today when we talk of issues, I remember that I was watching a match once in this historic Eden Gardens. And every time Saurav Ganguly missed a certain stroke, 100,000 people in the stadium had their own interpretation of how Saurav Ganguly should have responded to that ball. Now that's called the tyranny of the majority. So the answer, ladies and gentlemen, lies not in either a direct democracy or a representative democracy. The answer lies in a combination of both. We are a representative democracy and we have come far in life. I want to tell you, this country suffers from a humongous optimism deficit. Never lose hope. What we need, though, is participatory democracy. It is something that is there in India, but we don't respect it because on television channels, including the one that my dear moderator comes from, don't find time for it. It is called Panchayati Raj. It is called Panchayati Raj. It is a constitutional status by which every village, gram, zilla, block level, there are people that are scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, people from the Dalit community who have a right there to live their own life. And that's empowerment. We need to translate that into a bigger way by giving you a voice. Let's use technology to give you a bigger voice. That's what India needs to do, is to make you, ladies and gentlemen, more empowered. My last few lines before the bell goes through. Even as we talk, what is empowerment? It comes only through education. We can keep talking about this debate even 20 years from now, but if you're not educated, you're not empowered. India needs to educate its people. The debate becomes meaningless. And I'll tell you this. There is a young man, often criticized by a lot of people, who, even as we talk, is getting 15 people for his party being selected by the common man in primaries like it happens in certain parts of the world. He's saying, let the people decide who is going to be the candidate for the party. He is right now touring different places, meeting railway porters, meeting farmers, meeting tribal people to find out what should be in the manifesto of the party. I'm not taking too long. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you the bottom line. The bottom line is that end of day, empowerment will only happen when we agree that there is no such thing as a trade-off. There is no substitute for representative democracy.
Thank you, Sanjay.
But I can tell you last line, end of day, it needs to supplement representative democracy. That's why we need empowerment of the people even more. Now, whether you're a
Thank
Chatterjee
you,
or a
Sanjay.
Banerjee, whether
Thank
you're a
you.
Roy, City of Joy, please vote for this resolution.
Sanjay, thank you very much. Thank you. I don't know who that young man is that Sanjay Jha was talking about. Any guesses? Does anybody know? Well, let me call our next speaker tonight. I'm happy to call General J.J. Singh to speak next against the motion. General Singh, of course, the former Chief of Army Staff and the former Governor of Arunachal Pradesh, sir. Wonderful to have you speak tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This distinguished audience of Calcutta, the wonderful people of Calcutta, always give us great joy. And I'll correct myself, Kolkata. It comes out instinctively because when we were young, we came here, we used to call it differently, but it's Kolkata. I also want to thank Sanjay Jha because it seems most of what he said was from this side. We didn't infiltrate him there. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, having spent close to half a century in the olive green, perhaps my words will find an echo amongst the military at large and those who are present here today. I have also seen the other side of the coin, having been the governor of Arunachal Pradesh for 5.5 years. Actually, my service in the Northeast, both in the army and later on as governor, in my adult life, I calculated mathematically was 2 days per week of my life has been spent here. So the bonding has to be natural and it is everlasting. Thank you for the people of the Northeast. Quite a few of us soldiers have shed our blood for the nation, and many have sacrificed their lives for the defense of our motherland, for the future generations, for their prosperity and peace, Khushhali. We would like to see India as an important player on the world stage. We have the potential and we have the resources and a strategic location in the world jutting into the Indian Ocean with a commanding position. Leading a nation of our size, population, ethnic and religious diversity is indeed a Herculean challenge. The debate today is centered around this challenge, ladies and gentlemen, and I believe this will be a defining moment in our history. In which way or which manner do we wish to govern our nation is the issue touching every Indian's mind and heart at this juncture. In their wisdom, after great study and deliberation and debate, our founding fathers conceived our constitution, that of a free India, a pluralistic, democratic society with fundamental rights of all citizens enshrined, an independent judiciary, a free and vibrant press, civil services, and an apolitical, secular, and highly professional military, a fairly strong public and private industrial sector, and hard-working people. We stand today as a role model amongst the developing countries. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying it just to please us. If you go to Sri Lanka, if you go to Maldives, if you go to Nepal, if you go to Myanmar, people will tell you, the taxi driver will tell you, the common man will tell you. You go to even the Pakistani driving taxis in Dubai tells you that you have better quality of leadership and governance than us. And that is what I would like to say when somebody said we are not optimistic. There's optimism deficiency. I'm not alone, Sanjay. There are many Indians who feel likewise because they know how we can do it, and we will definitely do it. We do have our flaws and weaknesses as well. We must not forget that the eyes of not only our neighborhood, but the entire world are focused upon us today. We must therefore act in a mature and responsible manner. I'm saying these two words very deliberately because every Indian of every importance or otherwise must not behave irresponsibly and without maturity. The nation must come first before anything else for all of us. We chose a democratic path for developing our country and for peace and prosperity of our citizens. We have definitely made progress in the past 6.5 decades. India of 1950s, when sugar was a very precious commodity, the mothers used to lock up the sugar. Today we are exporting. So things have changed in every field. I don't have the time, but I'm saying things have changed and improved. Maybe, but certainly we could have done better. Our pace could have been faster. Today we are debating whether we need to adopt direct rule by the people instead of the representative democracy by universal adult franchise of today. Would we like to change the present system of governance or complement and improve it with instruments that can help us to eradicate the deficiencies? In my view, the latter is a better and more sound option. Franklin D. Roosevelt had said, democracy cannot succeed unless those who express their choice are prepared to choose wisely. The real safeguard of democracy, therefore, is education. It's the crux of the issue that countries where education standards have gone up, the people choose wisely. So our first and foremost duty is to invest more in education so that our citizenry could choose wisely. Absence of that, and today's kind of mufassal areas or the dehati areas where their laws are sometimes bizarre, it will be disaster if we impose something where they get that kind of a power. Because they are not educated enough, they are not wise enough, they are not perceptive enough. So we have to fear that risk. Winston Churchill said, the best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with an average voter. You sit with a pan wala and 5 minutes he'll tell you how this is bad, this is not run well, that is not run well. Because it's his perception. Give him that. If you ask him, what should we respond to Pakistan? He said, unko thok do. What should we do to China? Unko bhi thok do. Now, this is what his perception levels are. We, for God's sake, cannot have leaders who talk of zero national security consciousness. With that kind of a background, if they make statements and that becomes kind of a doctrine, will have disastrous consequences. In our existing legislative system, which according to me must stay, we could provide more options to the citizens. Some talk of Swiss model, some talk of the American states model, and in which initiative is given to them as an option when citizens can collectively suggest a new law. Sanjay Jha spoke about it. A referendum is another option to decide certain issues. Third is recall. Elected representative could be recalled before their term end because if they're not performing. Also reduce the period or term of legislators to 4 years. These are few of the options for consideration. We must, however, never forget that examples of smaller countries of Europe or other developing countries may not be appropriate or practical, keeping in mind our size, diversity, and numbers. We would have to find an Indian formula. And with our ingenuity, we can do it.
Thank you, sir. Your time is up.
Oh, give me, you didn't ring the first bell.
No, they did, sir.
Oh, I'm hard of hearing.
We'll give you a concession of another minute.
All right, I'll rule. Right. So therefore, direct democracy and rule of the law, rule of the people may sound nice and populist, but would it be practical? We must not forget the majority of India lives in villages or small towns. Therefore, citing some issues here would be appropriate. Citizens with no legal expertise may champion causes leading to drafting poor laws. Majorities can have a potential to hurt minority groups. Remember, we have to have leadership and laws that can take the nation together and take the nation forward. National security decisions, as I mentioned, cannot be jingoistic and decided unwisely. And also, if the decision making takes time, you cannot say, wait, I have to get everybody is okay before we can respond to the threat on the border. It has to be wise and quick in real time. Lastly, the citizens might take decisions mostly where there is a popular feeling and they benefit financially, even if the economics are wrong. So these kind of pressures will be brought on because we are not yet, the education
Sir,
is there.
I have to interrupt because you're way over time. My apologies.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think some very important points there made actually by General Singh, particularly on the issues of national security. I think that was one of the questions that's been debated a lot in recent weeks, ever since Prashant Bhushan made that statement on whether there should be a referendum in Kashmir, on whether the army should be stationed there. Can you imagine if that happened? And so many other national security implications. I'm sure if you took a vote on whether we should go to war with Pakistan the next time a soldier is beheaded, you would get a pretty scary answer. Is that necessarily the right thing to do? Well, think about it. I'd like to call on Shazia Ilmi now, spokesperson of the Aam Aadmi Party and very outspoken spokesperson, may I add.
Namaskar Kolkata, Adab Arz hai, and Inqilab Zindabad. As Tennyson said, the old order changeth, yielding place to new, and God fulfills himself in many ways, lest one good custom should corrupt the world. That good custom, my friend, is democracy. Yes, I speak for the motion, but before I'm labeled once again as a super anarchist, rabble rouser, gutter snipe, Maoist, anti-national, and what have you, let me say that I will give a qualified response to this. I think people should have a say in policy making and running of the government, but what we experience now is representative democracy has to be made more responsive and more responsible democracy and more participatory in nature. Right now, the way we see things is thanks to the anti-defection law that came about in 1985. The MPs themselves don't have freedom to go back to their constituency which has chosen them and put them there and seek their opinion on what the people really want. What is the constitutional mandate of the legislature? But to reflect the will of the people. Now, where is the will of the people? When you had 1/3 of parliamentarians who have declared criminal records against them, and another 1/3, as my friend Meera mentioned, who are princelings, who are there because of the last names and because of dynastic succession, do you think they would really reflect the will of the people? I really wonder. It's really unfortunate that anybody who tries to challenge the system which promotes anarchy actually is called an anarchist. It's almost as if you will use people, you'll use the whole idea of democracy to speak and work against the people. It's really been a bit of a joke. We've seen 2 urban stirrings in the last 2 years. 2.5 rather. One is the Anna Hazare Andolan, and one is the whole outrage on the Nirbhaya case. And it was these two extremely important people's movements that changed the national consciousness on very serious issues in our country. One is corruption, and one is women's safety, and the way we portray women, the way we look at women, and our attitudes toward women and patriarchy. I think something is to be said here. Some way our representative form of democracy is not delivering. Had it been delivering, do you know the records today when you read it, only 25% of Indians have access to drinking water, clean drinking water. Almost half of India, 638 million people defecate in the open. That is 50% of our countrymen and countrywomen. Think how appalling that is. 1/3 of the world's poor live in India. 1 out of every 3 children born in India is malnourished. Is our elected representatives, are they really doing their job? Is this representative democracy really delivering? The answer is no. From an enraged citizenry, we have to become engaged citizenry. We have to go out there and remind the politicians, and if need be, even recall them to do their jobs, that they must reflect the will of the people. No, we're not talking about having a Hindu Rashtra or beating of women. No, we're talking about rule of law, the very reason why they are there in the first place. We're talking about public funds. We're talking about MLA-led schemes. We're talking about MP-led schemes. We want to know why such huge discretionary powers are given to our elected representatives without any way to engage the people in the way funds will be spent for them. I contested elections from R.K. Puram, and I was appalled to see that in a slum dwelling there, all people wanted was a public toilet. They have been demanding this for the last 10 years. Every year, 4 crores are given to an MLA for a betterment of, of the particular constituencies. There were benches made in parks that didn't exist on paper, where there were no plants or trees or flowers, but there was not a public toilet which people wanted. All the women wanted was to go safely to a place where they can at least defecate and have basic dignity of life, but they were denied that only because they didn't matter. Yes, there was money to be made where making of benches was concerned. That also in the most surreptitious and opaque manner, which nobody would know of. People talk about governance. What good is governance if there's no accountability, if there's no transparency? Right now, according to Transparency International, 16% of our GDP is wasted on corruption. Can you imagine what would we achieve had we been able to prevent siphoning of funds the way they're happening right under our noses? We declare these wonderful social security measures, but there is no way to fix our public delivery mechanisms. I think the huge case is to be made here. You know, when you think of democracy, what kind of a democracy do you have in mind? Do you have in mind a kleptocracy, which masquerades as democracy? After all, how democratic is our democracy? You really wonder. And when people protest, it's called anarchy. Mahatma Gandhi said, I will fight against an unjust law and bear the consequences of it to ask for more liberty and freedom for my people and myself. We believe in that. I feel when so many parliamentarians, because of where they come from and because of the vested interests they represent and because of the party whip, I think they have very little choice in the matter and can really do little to engage with people and ask them what they really want. When you think of democracy, you know, it has to be beyond a platitude. We have to go out there and seize it. We have to make our elected representatives more responsive and responsible. The whole idea of Swaraj and Panchayati Raj, which I'm afraid has not been allowed where devolution of powers are concerned in our country, and the idea of Swaraj is for the elected representatives to go out there, to take opinions, and not just opinions, to make sure that 60% of the Mohalla Sabha decides which contractor, first of all, will get the contract for a road, for various tenders and licenses, and also how money should be spent. Whether they want more primary school teachers in the schools, or whether they want a fountain with no water. So it's hilarious. It's really hilarious, you know, when you talk of democracy in this empty, vacuous way. Democracy has to be deepened. It has to be sharpened. Yes, we have to seize it. I'm a big believer and advocate of democracy, but not an empty, vacuous democracy, which actually stands for some kind of a kleptocracy and an oligarchy here. Yes, we made a tryst with destiny, and our destiny is democracy, but democracy in the way which reflects the will of the people and betterment of the people. Let's take a vote here on another question. In Benjamin Franklin's words, tell me, do you want a democracy to be like two wolves and a lamb, you know, waiting for a vote as to what is to be had for lunch? Or do we want the lamb to be well armed to contest that vote? I rest my case. Inqilab Zindabad.
Thank you very much, Shazia. As always, Shazia very passionately making her points there about why she believes that direct democracy is the right thing. But I leave you with a thought before I hand it over to Mithun Chakravarti, which is that, is the majority always right? Think about it. Is majoritarianism necessarily the right thing? And while Mahatma Gandhi did talk about devolution of powers for villages and he championed Panchayati Raj, I think we often forget what Dr. B.R. Ambedkar had warned about greater power to villages and the cesspools of prejudice that they actually were. These are things to ponder over. Do we want a more participatory democracy? Yes. But is the majority always right? Does the majority always know what is the greater good for society? I think these are things we need to think about when we look at the questions of direct democracy. Mithun Chakravarti, superstar, and now Member of Parliament. He's our next speaker for the motion. Against the motion. Sorry.
Thank you, ma'am, and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Abhigda, for choosing Balika Bakra today. Among the best speakers, you have chosen me. Thank you very much. Well, I would rather say I will not go into the deep because you have been hearing the best speakers. I would rather go into my own experiences of life, how it runs. When I was a young boy, I am a boy from North Calcutta. And in Paras, that was the time we used to call Para. Para is a very big thing for us. We used to go and ask everyone that how to do the Durga Puja, then how to do our musical function. We used to घर घर में जाके हम चंदा इकट्ठे करते थे, इकट्ठा करके लेके आते थे. That's the way everybody was involved, each and everyone for the para. Then time changed. You may ask me why I'm saying all these things, because it is for the future, because that's the debate. And you know what happened? After that, some time passed, things changed. Locality में नए लोग आ गए. They are not with the spirit. They did not understand. The old Dadu died. And suddenly, the most dangerous thing happened. We started forming groups. And the groups, the friends became enemies. And the whole thought of running a para by the people went berserk. So for me, it is not only difficult but impossible for people to run a para. Then how can they run a government? Second, it's very easy to bat against the politician. I understand. Even I did that. And as a film man, I did the most. Well, but trust me with my heart, I can speak, tell you, हिंदुस्तान में सभी खराब नहीं हैं. अगर खराब होते तो ये देश बिखर के कहीं से कहीं चला गया होता. कुछ लोग खराब हैं और कुछ लोगों के लिए इतने लोगों को बदनाम ना करें. यू कैन से कि रादर बहुत लोग खराब हैं, कुछ लोग अच्छे हैं. आई से नो. इतना बड़ा देश कैसे चल सकता है? एक घर में अगर 4 बच्चे हैं, वो अपने अपने सवाल, अपनी अपनी चीजें हमें बताते हैं. दे टेल मी डैड वी वांट दिस. आई हियर देम, आई अंडरस्टैंड देम, देन गो टू द मार्केट एंड डिसाइड. दैट्स द वे यू रन ए हाउस. If somebody, suddenly people rise and say, we want to run a government, it will be like playing East Bengal and Mohun Bagan match. Come on, man. Democracy doesn't mean that you don't have laws. You have laws. Democracy doesn't mean you go and kill anybody you like. It has a process, it has laws. You have to follow them, believe them, then go ahead. Tell me how many of them, how many of you, I understand each of you sitting here is very intelligent, very, very thoughtful, and you can say whatever you like. That's democracy. Tell me how many of you walk on the street without a mobile phone? Tell me how many of you, how many of us still believe that zebra is the crossing? Well, man, that's the way the government is going to run. You will shout and nothing will happen. You need someone, somebody to give you a thought. That's the way democracy runs. You give your thought. Yes, I agree with you. You change the governance, change the way they do things. That power you have. You have every power you have. But do not, by Joe, tell me that, well, buddy, we are going to run the government. Raise your hands, how many are ready for it? Well, and the next one is somebody lying here, there, and somebody has not gone back home. Do you want that? You don't want it. You see, that's my life. I have seen life from the footpath to here. I still do not complain. I'm not here to say I'm one of the highest taxpayers of the country from 94 to 99. No. I'm not here to say and to brag about it. I've got the certificate from the finance ministry with the Ashok Stamba on it. People say you have got 4 national awards. I said yes, 3 for acting and 1 for paying money. This is the one award I paid money, I got it. Trust me. Well, I am not here to say anything more than that. This is my personal experience. I think to run something, you need someone. And that someone you choose. You choose, then you be careful. But can you really run a government? Can all of us? Is it possible? Touch your heart and say, it is not. Because you have so many things to do. We have to think about your children, for their education, for their future. So leave something for somebody else to think and do your job for you. And for that, thank you. I think you spared me because I have not taken the oath yet. I know, I understand. Well, ma'am, I won't take much time because 2 minutes more? Okay. I have? Okay. So now I understand, I'll tell you something very interesting. Ma'am, if you allow me to do so, though it's not relatively concerned with the thought today, but I must speak of it. One time I had 3 girlfriends. In democracy, they had their voices. And one day, I was beaten very badly because I was caught red-handed. So before you get red-handed, not so many people, choose one. Thank you very much.
And I think everybody would agree in saying that has been one of the best speeches we've heard in a long time. Mithun Da, that was great. And I hope that if Parliament is allowed to function, we will hear you speak on the floor of the House as well, if Parliament is allowed to function. Well, Ruchir, you have the wonderful task of following up on that. As you speak for the motion, good luck with that. Ruchir Joshi, of course, eminent writer and filmmaker.
Madam Chairman, friends, respected opposition, respected colleagues. Mithun Dutt said something about being a bakra to Avik Babu. I think we all know who the real bakra is. I have to follow up on this. I think that is, just simply because of that, I think I deserve all kinds of extra help because there is no following up on that. So forgive me if I'm a little disjointed because there's a lot of very interesting, very exciting, sometimes quite funny stuff that's come up here. So let me start with a story, okay? There's enough of you here who are old enough to remember the 1960s. Those of you who are younger, forgive, read the history books or check the net and you'll see what I mean. But in 1965, a Prime Minister of India travels to Tashkent. There he meets the President. There he meets the President of Pakistan and they are brought to a truce after a war. Ayub Khan, Lal Bahadur Shastri. One night, Lal Bahadur Shastri has a heart attack and he dies there in Tashkent. People have raised questions about whether this was a conspiracy, whether the Pakistanis were involved, the CIA was involved, the KGB was involved. Let's just say it was an act of God. Lal Bahadur Shastri left us. Let's imagine a slightly different scenario. Tell me if this is better, people. Hello? Yeah. So let's imagine a slightly different scenario. Shastri survives. Nothing happens to him. He comes back with a great peace. Pakistan and India keep arguing who's won the war and stuff like this. But a certain experiment in democracy, and a democracy which is directly run and worked by the people, continues. Okay? Lal Bahadur Shastri rules. There is no syndicate. There is no Indira Gandhi. The RSS and the Hindu right slowly die their natural death. Narendra Modi is selling insurance or running a motel in Dayton, Ohio, because there's nothing for him to do. Indira Gandhi retires to Dehradun, and her sons, one is gambling in Las Vegas and spends a sort of loser's life. The older one is living in Bologna with his wife. They have nothing to do with Indian politics. Okay, imagine this. Imagine Lal Bahadur Shastri in power, And imagine a decent opposition. The communist opposition is there, a business right-wing opposition is there. Jansangh becomes something else, not the virulent Hindu fascists that they are today, but something quite different, a serious, conservative, anti-socialist alliance of business groups and interests who believe in a certain kind of social conservatism, which India, and frankly all of us, would welcome. Most of you probably vote for them. Okay, now, if that had happened, and if a certain transition from license Raj and socialism Raj in a non-corrupt way, in a non-Indira Gandhi way, in a non-Sanjay Gandhi way, in a non-Dhirubhai Ambani way, had taken place in this country, what would this motion mean? It's very simple. It's what's written in our constitution. The government should be run directly by the people. Okay? Jana Gana Mana He Adhinayak. This is what the Indian constitution says. Now, I don't know what these gentlemen are arguing about, what they're claiming to get. We have the motion. We have the motion. For example, let me take General Saab's contention. In a government that's run directly by the people, it should be very clear that the army has no business, when the people of India do not want it, to have the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, and we have the license to kill and rape without any kind of a comeback from justice, that we do not want you to do this. The army should be willing to relinquish this and move back at the risk of their lives. And it should not be a question that morale army ka kharab ho jayega, because if you're punishing someone who's a wrongdoer, who's committed a rape in Himachal or in Nagaland, or in Kashmir or in Nagaland, it should not be a matter of national shame. It should be a matter of national honor. Because why is it a matter of national honor? Because we are not the Pakistani army. We are not like they were in East Pakistan and in Bangladesh. We are not like the American army. We don't have Abu Ghraib. That is what a government run directly by the people would have achieved. Unfortunately, we lost our way. Okay, Derek, I don't know what, I'm thanked. It's nice to see you after all these times. You kind of ran away to Delhi after the elections, and one's just not seen you here. Really, moving a writer's building from there to Nobanno is an achievement of Didi. I guess, yeah, next you'll be saying that all the traffic lights are working in Calcutta and she didn't ask anyone, they were working. This is normal stuff. You know, if you pay the MPs more, they'll work better. You're clearly not paying your MLAs very much. How much, what's happened in Bengal, all of you may know very little because you're city-bred people and you live in an elite, but please, somebody who knows, tell me what has happened in Bengal over the last 3 years, how much precious little has happened. You should pay your MLAs a bit more, maybe. You know, there are rumors of course that when the CPM would take 10% of a bribe, with the Trinamool it's open business. All unfounded of course, but the fact that the rumors are there is something you need to pay attention to. Okay, this is what happens when that kind of government is happening and the people are not talking to the government is not talking to the people. Things are improving. I think Didi is doing better now, I think Amit Babu is doing better, and I'm optimistic about Calcutta in a way that I'm certainly not about Delhi or Ahmedabad or Bombay, or God forbid we are not there. Okay, Joy Kolkata. My point, to get back to this, is that I think I would disagree with even my own colleagues. I would just say, look, the problem is not with what we had. That was not, the car that we were given to drive was not broke. We don't need to fix the car. What we were given was a pretty precise model. There would be access, MPs would be honest, no one would be corrupt. There would be caste politics, of course, but within an understanding of a larger nationhood. You know, certainly there was no envisaging that what would happen like what happened in Gujarat in 2002, where that is really government by the people. Because if we accept Mr. Modi's contention that he did not plan the murders and the rapes and there's nothing he had to do with it, then he was incompetent. And the people took over for 2 months, killing the other people that they didn't want. Okay, in Calcutta, we're seeing the same thing a little bit, sorry, Derek, but when rickshawalas are constantly attacking, auto rickshawalas are constantly attacking women in there, I'm sure the government is thinking of doing something, but that is also people taking over. That is what centralized, corrupt, inept, and dishonest government does. Whereas what we are arguing is to bring back the stuff to the point where actually we are honest and true to our constitution, to our heritage, to that tryst with destiny that we are supposed to have made. And frankly, perhaps, don't worry about what happens in the rest of the country. We are Calcutta. Let's start and really make it happen that, what we think today is what India thinks tomorrow. It hasn't happened for 60, 70 years. Let's bring it back. All of you have come here by cars. Mamata Banerjee is going to need to take on the fact that all of us cannot be the cars cannot expand in the way they are. Let's start taking buses, improve the buses, stop private cars, start charging them. One radical solution, let the people talk to the government, not us, upper middle class people, but the real poor people who cannot walk on the street. Okay? The women who are being attacked all over the country, in different countries, they were attacked under the communists, they're being attacked under the BJP, they're being attacked under the Congress. We are not discussing in this entire elections, nobody is discussing the rights of women as a gender issue. People are doing it in a roundabout way. Arvind Kejriwal says, हाँ, हमने ना एक औरत और एक आदमी को रखा है हर मोहल्ले पे, and we are discussing women's issues. You know, आपको जो हुआ बहुत बुरा हुआ, he says to one northeastern girl who was molested in a bus. Not the point. We are not discussing human rights. We are not discussing environmental rights. We are discussing Arvind Kejriwal, Narendra Modi, and Rahul Gandhi. This is not government run directly by the people or an election run directly. Let's take away the debate and change it around. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Great points made there by Ruchir Joshi, especially about how in these elections we don't seem to be focusing on the issues that we in fact ourselves agitated about at the streets of Delhi when the gang rape happened, when we've seen violence against women. Today you have people in the national capital protesting against discrimination against those from the northeast. But where do these issues figure in this campaign is a very pertinent point, and the points that were made on upholding the values of the Constitution. Well, our last speaker tonight, speaking against the motion, is Smriti Irani, Vice President of the BJP and Member of Parliament. Smriti.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm good evening to you all. Let me first begin by giving a compliment to my senior colleague from the media industry, Shri Mithun Chakraborty. Dada, whether or not you take an oath, I am absolutely sure that your eloquence will be appreciated even in the House of Elders in the Indian Parliament. Mr. Joshi today seeks to demean all those who believed in the concept of a democratic process of electing representatives. He urged us all to delve into history, and I am of the belief that we are all here today not to fix a blame for the past, but to fix a course for the future. I am extremely indebted to Telegraph, especially Obigda, for while Ms. Meera Sanyal today at the beginning of her speech speaks about a parliament which has less than 11% of female representation, the Telegraph, at least through this national debate, allows a debate to be moderated by a woman, allows a debate to begin by a woman, and allows a debate to end by a lady. After hearing all my esteemed panelists and colleagues this evening, I am of the belief that when governance fails, it compels us to question the virtues of democracy. Everyone who spoke tonight spoke about how we failed through governance. Even Ms. Meera Sanyal spoke about the 15th Lok Sabha and how dysfunctional it was, how it limited itself to just 1 year of productive work, but also acknowledged that when a good government was in place, Parliament functioned 5 times better. It is ironical that democracy gives us the right to disagree, and that is a right I uphold tonight. Like Mithunda, I do not come from a family of political inheritance. I do not come from a family which had millions to spend to make me a star. Yes, I worked hard. Yes, I'm successful. Yes, Ms. Sanyal, I gave up that profession to be a member of Parliament, and I make absolutely no bones about it, that I'm privileged that the people choose me as their representative. It is ironical that today Ms. Sanyal is encompassed in a panel where there are many who disagree with what she proposed. The gentleman to her right, Mr. Sanjay Jha, represents a party which talks about empowering the people through RTI, empowering women especially, if you remember the Arnab Goswami interview, but seeks to come to power by virtue of their birth. It is ironical that Ms. Sanyal begins by bemoaning the fact that women are less and less seen in Parliament, whereas she is joined on the panel by a gentleman whose party failed to pass the 33% reservation bill for women in Parliament. It is ironical indeed when we talk about the Panchayati Raj, when we talk about people's power, ironical when we challenge the army on issues of fairness and justice. I'm seated next to General Singh as somebody whose family has also served in the lower ranks of the armed forces. As a proud Indian, I say, the army helps us not only deliver security and justice, but the army also has the courage to correct the flaws within their own system. Yes, we are not a Pakistan, sir. That I say with pride. It is ironical about the fact that I hear that people are empowered through Panchayati Raj, and colleagues who speak about Panchayati Raj, who seek to attack the army, forget that sarpanchas in the state of Jammu and Kashmir are killed because they believe in the democratic process. Forget that the sarpanchas of Jammu and Kashmir seek to have powers enough to serve the panchayat, to serve the people, and their cries go unheard because there is a government in Delhi which might be of the people but doesn't hear the people. I'm also told, Mr. Jha very humbly reminds us all, that in the forthcoming Lok Sabha election, 780 million people go to vote. Ms. Ilmi exalts the virtue of the Mohalla Sabha, of direct democracy. And many a panelist tonight have spoken about the Swiss model. Well, if you look at the numbers of the Swiss model, in 120 years in Switzerland, 240 pieces of legislation were put to vote through the process of direct democracy. And what was the result? Only 10% met the approval of its citizens. That too, those pieces of legislation that were redrafted again and again by the government of the day. There are some who talk about e-democracy in the US, which encourages direct participation in democracy through the people. Now imagine e-democracy in India, a nation which saw 20 states blacking out one fine day for over 72 hours. Imagine a nation where you talk about 780 million people going to vote, and you seek to empower people through the Swiss model, where people in Switzerland vote 4 times in a year with a ballot being sent to every citizen's house. Now imagine that model in India, where the Indian Postal Service sends you a telegram 3 weeks late. Shazia Ilmi, my esteemed colleague, speaks about the need to empower people directly in Swaraj. What happens in Swaraj, the bill that they proposed in Delhi, is something my senior colleague Mithunda described very well through his Pada experience. I'm not as eloquent as he is. I'm just another housewife who's fighting the ill of price rise every day. Hence, I have lost my sense of humor in the past 5 years especially. But I will say this, those who attack the virtues of democracy, those who attack the parliamentary system of governance are those who seek to run for elections in Lok Sabha 2014, are those who sacrificed governance, cheated the voter, and imposed the president's rule in the nation's capital, all so that they could pursue their political ambitions for the Lok Sabha election. Since we all believe in democracy, ladies and gentlemen, Swaraj is a dream that every Indian was born with. But I am of the belief, and I second my senior colleague General Singh, that for Purna Swaraj, you need Purna Siksha. For Purna Swaraj, you need Purna Swasth. For Purna Swaraj, you need Purna Suraksha. Hence, all those who talk about government being more responsive and responsible, well, as Ms. Ilmi, you had an opportunity to bring about a change through governance. I am of the belief a leader does not only take you where you want to be, a leader also takes you where you ought to be. You did not take that opportunity to bring about a change through governance. So, ladies and gentlemen, it does not matter whether you put in your vote for a name. It does not matter whether you vote for a chai wala. But what I am concerned about is somebody wrapped in a muffler with a convenient cough who sacrifices good governance at the altar of power politics. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Smriti Irani, thank you very much. You know, if this was a television debate, there would be people on either side jumping at each other's throats. And, you know, I know that everyone on each side has a rebuttal that they want to do, but this is not a television debate, so I have to control that temptation. And I am told that the verdict is now left to all of you on whether you support the motion or whether you oppose the motion. So let's put this to vote right away. How many of you sitting here tonight believe that the government should be run directly by the people? Please raise your hands. Okay, and how many believe that the government should not be run directly by the people? Well, they win. In the opinion of the House, the government should not be run directly by the people. You guys have won. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us tonight. You've been a terrific audience, very responsive, very passionate and participative. It was great to listen to all the panelists tonight with their opposing views. Wonderful to listen to all of you. Thank you very much. Thank you to Avik Sarkar, to the Telegraph and everyone here. Good night.
Just hang on for a couple more minutes, please. The panelists, can I request you to please take the seat? Okay. Derek? Derek, we just need a couple more minutes. I hope all of you enjoyed this debate tonight. And this was made possible because of course, like every other year, Telegraph or the ABP Group. Please give them a big round of applause for Telegraph and ABP Group. Now, I wish to request Mr. Rudrangshu Mukherjee to come to the dais and make his statement about the debate and the sponsors.
Good evening. Sorry to hold you up. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks. I want to begin by thanking the Calcutta Club, the presidents and members of the committee for allowing us to be the partner in this national debate, and we hope to be back next year for another version of this debate on an equally exciting subject and an equally talented and articulate group of panelists. I also want to thank those who supported and sponsored this debate, ABP Anando, Friends FM, and Maruti Celerio. This debate, as you can imagine, wouldn't have been possible without the participation of the panelists. So I'm very grateful to the 8 speakers who came, took time off to make this such a meaningful event, and to our moderator Nidhi Razdan, who actually gave up a trip with the Foreign Minister Salman Khurshid to go to Kandahar, a place that she has never been to before. And Salman Khurshid, I said, yes. And we are very grateful, Nidhi, and may I add that you did a wonderful job, especially keeping them at 8 minutes. But we don't want to keep this sense of appreciation to mere words. May I request the president of the Calcutta Club, Mr. Kunal Raychaudhuri, to please come up on stage and show our appreciation and our gratitude in more tangible terms. Kunal Raychaudhuri, please.